You know, I think all of us strive to be better and better leaders as we progress through our lives and through our careers. And today we have the pleasure of hearing from Kevin Karschnik. Kevin has been a speaker with the Round Rock Chamber on a couple of occasions in the past. He is back today by popular demand. He has a career as a public speaker, as a corporate trainer. And I'd like to just give you the names of some of the organizations that he has provided service to. Abu Dhabi, Scotland, Singapore, Panama. He has presented and trained AT&T executives, Fox Television, National Geographic, State Farm, and literally dozens of other clients. We're very fortunate that he is here in the Round Rock, Austin area, and he has a new book coming out in early 2012 that is called Corporate Ovations. And so we're looking forward to that. Today we're going to be hearing about 3 qualities that will make all of us more effective leaders. So please join me in welcoming Kevin Karschnik. Kevin.
There was a businessman on vacation down at South Padre, taking a stroll on the beach late in the morning, when a fisherman had come in with his catch of the day. And the businessman asked the fisherman, "Looks like you got a good catch. How long you been out today?" The fisherman said, "Just for a couple hours. Kind of got a late start today. I slept in, caught enough fish for the day, calling it a day." Businessman said, "Well, what are you going to do now?" Fisherman said, "Well, I'm going to clean up the fish. I'm going to head home, take a little nap, spend some time with my kids when they get home from school, have dinner with the family. And then in the evenings, my wife and I like to go into the town, maybe do some dancing, maybe have some drinks, maybe catch a movie. I have a very full life," he told the businessman. The businessman said, "Well, maybe you didn't know this, but I've got my MBA from Harvard. And I've got some suggestions for you if you don't mind." He said, "What if you fished a little longer during the day?" The fisherman said, "Well, why would I do that?" And he said, "Well, you could catch more fish and have enough extra money to buy a bigger boat." The fisherman said, but why?" He said, "Because that extra money will then enable you to go get 2 or 3 more boats. And next thing you know, you'll have this fleet of boats. And with all that extra money, you'll be able to bypass the middleman, go directly to the refineries." He said, "With all that extra money, you might even have enough money to buy your own refinery. Move out of South Padre, maybe move over to New Orleans, maybe up to New York City, and you can run your enterprise from there." And the fisherman said, but how long is this going to take?" He said, 20, 25 years. And the fisherman said, "But then what?" The businessman said, "Well, this is when it really starts to get good, because you're going to be a millionaire. And you're going to be able to sell your enterprise, and you'll be able to retire." And the fisherman said, "But then what?" And then the businessman said, "This is where it gets really good, because when you're retired," he goes, "you can move to a little village off the coast. Maybe like South Padre. And you could sleep in the mornings. You could do a little fishing. Take a nap. Spend some time with your grandkids. Have dinner with your family. And then in the evenings, you and your wife could go into the town and have drinks, or see friends, or watch a movie." That's the end of that story. If you don't know where you're going, you might not get there. Great leaders have purpose. If you love yogiisms, Yogi said, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. You got to know where you're going. That's what great leaders do. They have purpose. They know how to prioritize, and they're persistent. And that's what we're going to talk about today at lunch. I want to start with purpose. How do you know what you want in life? What are the most important things in all of your life? I have a couple of tools. One tool I want to share with you that I learned from Zig Ziglar, one of my absolute favorite speakers. He calls it the life wheel. How many people are familiar with the life wheel? Got 2 or 3 hands in the audience. What Zig did, he did this 20 years ago when I saw him in Austin. And he was drawing on one of those transparencies on a projector that projected onto the screen. Have you ever seen those? Remember those? And he drew this circle. And on the circle, he said, you're going to identify along the circle all of the most important things in your life. And he said, you need to decide what these are. And I'm going to do that with you. You get to decide what these spokes are. And we're going to get kind of personal a little bit today because I'm going to share with you all mine. And I hope some of them overlap with the most important things in your life. So as I went around the circle, I wrote down my wife, I wrote down my job, my education, exercising, God, diet, spending time with my kids and spending time with my hobbies. I said, those are the most important things in my life. And then Zig said, you start in the middle with a 0, and you go all the way to the outside on a scale of 0 to 10, and you graph where you're at in all these different areas. And so I did that. I kind of went around and I started to plot on a 0 to 10 basis where I'm at with all these different areas in my life. And then when you're done, you fill it in. And he said, how many of us have flat tires in our lives? How many of us are lopsided in one area where maybe we're spending too much time doing some of the things that aren't as important to us as some of the others? And so as I started to go around my circle and started to see, well, I do a really good job at work, and I think I do a pretty good job with my wife. She always tells me I could do better. I stole a little something from Clint Eastwood. He has a movie that you may have seen called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You seen that? The tool that I want to share that I use, I call it The Good, the Bad, and the New. And so I went around the circle and I said, well, how about my relationship with my wife? What am I doing good in that relationship? Because there's some good things that are happening there. What am I doing bad? What are some areas that I can get better at? And then what are some new or different things that I could do moving forward to take it to that next level? One of my favorite quotes says, there is no best, there's always a better. You go to that next level. So I wanted to take all those areas around my life wheel and take them to the next level using my good, bad, new tool. So if you like that, I'd like you to apply that to your life. So good leaders have a purpose. They know where they're going. They know what are the important things in their lives. They know how they're doing in them. They know what they're doing bad. They know what they'll do to get to the next level. Great leaders also have priorities. They know how to take the things on this life wheel and they know how to prioritize them. And so I want to share with you a story of the mason jar and a cup of coffee. This mason jar represents your life. In order to have priorities, you have to know what you're putting into that life, and it might be some of the things from the life wheel. And we're going to start with the most important things of anything in your life. And if you had to name a couple of those most important things, and if we had to identify them with golf balls, and we had to put golf balls into this mason jar, how many golf balls do you think we could fit? How many golf balls would fit in that mason jar? How many? I see somebody holding up 4 hands. Maybe 4 golf balls would fit into that mason jar. So what are the 4 absolute most important things in your life? If you had to put those 4 things into this mason jar. And for me, I'd put a golf ball in that represented God. I'd put a golf ball in that represented my family. I'd put a golf ball that represented my work. Those are the most important things that I do every day that are a part of my life. So I put those in first. Now, do we have other important things that we have in our lives? Besides those 3 or 4 things? I got to pay bills, do you? I got to cut the grass. It's not important. It's not the most important thing, but it's important because if I don't do it, my neighbors get mad. If I don't do it, the electricity company gets mad. And I made a deal with them. If I don't pay my bill, they're going to cut off the electricity. That's the arrangement I made with them. I keep laughing, Charles. That's as funny as I get. And And so we have other things that are important, and that's pebbles. I put pebbles in. And what happens when you pour pebbles into the mason jar after the golf balls have been in there? They fit around. They fill in around those other areas. So the most important 2, 3, 4 things that you do represent golf balls. The other important things are represented by rocks or pebbles, and there's room for all of it. What about the little things? I can look around this room and know that there's at least a dozen of you that spend way too much time on the internet. Facebook and Twitter, to be specific. I see your updates constantly. And so where do those fit in? I call that sand. That's the little stuff. I don't mind doing the little things, but I want to do them after I've done my golf balls, after the pebbles. And what happens when I pour that sand into the mason jar? Where does it go? Fits in nice around everything. There's room for it all. And so I call this story, as we introduce priorities, called The Mason Jar and a Cup of Coffee. What do you think? Thank you. I was waiting for the cup of coffee. Somebody said, well, where's the cup of coffee come in? The cup of coffee comes in at the very end. When you've done everything in the priorities that you've wanted, you take that cup of coffee and there's room to sit down and have a cup of coffee with a friend. Like I'm doing tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with Nicole, who invited me to have coffee with her in downtown Round Rock. So there's room once you've prioritized everything in your life in the right order. Now let me turn this around on you for just a second. Let's say we filled that mason jar with sand. Got to work early in the morning because I got a lot to do today. First thing I did was I opened up my email. Anybody do that? Next thing you know, I wanted to go and check the internet because I wanted to see what was going on Facebook. And next thing you know, I looked down, my watch is 10:30. Half my morning's gone. And all the little stuff is taking up my time. And it's too late to get anything started late morning, right? So I'll wait and do something as soon as I get back from lunch. As soon as I get back, and the next thing you know, I had a long lunch because I met with a friend. And next thing you know, you're home from work late. And I'm trying to jam golf balls into this full jar of sand. And what happens when you do that? There's no room. There's no room to put the golf balls in once the jar is full of sand. And so you got to start your morning off by prioritizing what's important. Put the most important things in first, followed by other important things that we all do, followed by the little things, because there's time for the little things, and then there's always time for that cup of coffee.